I never imagined I would find myself in this position. My name is Eliza Turner, and I was a successful businesswoman, always in control. But nothing in my life could prepare me for the moment, when everything I thought I knew about family and love came crashing down. It was a typical Wednesday afternoon, or so I thought. I was busy with work, my mind racing with endless deadlines. My 2 children Max and Sophie were at school and my husband, Peter, was out for a meeting. But life has a way of throwing curveballs, and the phone call I received that afternoon changed everything. It was a nurse from the hospital calling. "Mrs. Turner, we regret to inform you that there has been a serious car accident. We need you to come immediately." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. My hands shook as I tried to make sense of the situation. "What do you mean serious? What happened to my children?" I asked, panic rising in my throat. "They're stable for now, but you need to get here immediately." The nurse replied, "We've already called your husband." I dropped the phone, feeling as though the floor had been pulled out from under me. My children, the people I loved most in the world, were in danger, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I rushed to the hospital, praying it wasn't as bad as they were making it sound. When I arrived, I was met by the doctor, who gave me the worst news. "Your children are alive, but your daughter, Sophie, has suffered a severe head injury. She's stable for now, but she'll need surgery immediately." I felt the ground beneath me give way. How could this be happening? The next few hours were a blur, with nurses and doctors rushing in and out, trying to save Sophie's life. I couldn't even bring myself to call anyone. My family, my parents. But as the hours dragged on, I needed help. I needed someone to look after Max, my 5-year-old son. He was terrified, clinging to me as though he thought I might disappear at any moment. But no one was there. My parents, who I had relied on for so many years, weren't answering their phones. I sent a quick text message to my mom and dad. "I'm at the hospital. Sophie's in surgery. Can you please come look after Max?" It was simple, straightforward. But it took them hours to respond. And when they finally did, it wasn't the response I expected. "Sorry, Eliza, we can't make it. We have tickets to see a Broadway show with friends. We've been planning it for months. You'll have to figure it out yourself." I was stunned. It was as though they didn't care at all. My own parents, who I had helped through tough times, who I had supported when they needed it, were choosing a night out over being there for me when I needed them most. They didn't even ask if Sophie was okay, if I needed help. All they cared about was their plans. At that moment, something inside me broke. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't keep giving and giving, only to be met with indifference when I needed them. I looked at my terrified son and knew I had to take control of my life. I called a nanny service and paid a small fortune to have someone come take care of Max. But even as I did, I felt the weight of everything. The years of silent sacrifices, the financial help I had given my parents without ever asking for anything in return. And now, when I needed them most, they couldn't even be bothered to help with my children. The surgery took hours. I was a wreck, unable to focus on anything other than the fear that Sophie might not make it. When the doctor finally came to me, he gave me the news. "She's stable now. We were able to fix the damage, but we'll need to monitor her closely for the next few days." I felt relief flood over me, but it was quickly replaced by anger. Anger at my parents, anger at the way they had treated me for years. They had always put themselves first, always favored my older brother, Jason, and now it felt like I was just another obligation to them. I had spent my entire life doing everything for them. Paying their bills when they struggled, stepping in when they needed support. But when it came time for me to need them, they couldn't even make it to the hospital. That night, I made a decision. I was done. Done with being the one who always picked up the slack, who always made sacrifices for others, only to be treated like an afterthought. I was done with the constant emotional manipulation, the way they made me feel guilty for things I had no control over. The next few weeks were a blur of emotions, but one thing became clear: I needed to stand up for myself. I couldn't keep letting them walk all over me. So I did something I had never thought I would do. I cut them off. I blocked their numbers. I canceled every financial support I had been giving them. I stopped answering their calls, stopped helping them with their problems. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It was the first time in my life that I had put myself first, and I knew it was the right decision. But as much as I felt empowered by the choice, there was a part of me that still worried. What would they think? Would they hate me? Would they even notice? But as the days went by, I realized something. They didn't care. They didn't even notice. My parents, who I had spent my entire life trying to please, didn't even care enough to reach out and ask why I had cut them off. They didn't care that their granddaughter had been in a life-threatening accident. They didn't care that I had been at the hospital alone, terrified, with no one to support me. I had spent so much of my life trying to please them, trying to earn their love and approval. But in the end, it didn't matter. They weren't the ones who had been there for me. The people who truly mattered. My friends, my husband, my children. They were the ones who had supported me through it all. And that realization hit harder than any text message or missed call from my parents ever could. It had been 2 weeks since I made the decision to cut my parents off completely. The silence between us was deafening. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was on the edge of a breakdown. Max and Sophie, though still recovering from their trauma, were doing better, and I felt an unexpected peace start to settle within me. But then, one morning, as I was making breakfast for Max and Sophie, the doorbell rang. It was sharp, urgent, and it echoed through the house like a warning. My heart raced as I wiped my hands on a dish towel, glancing at my children. If it was my parents, I wasn't sure I was ready for it. When I opened the door, I was shocked to see my grandfather, Richard Turner, standing there. It had been nearly 4 years since I had seen him. Grandpa Richard was always calm, always steady, the one person in the family who seemed to see through all the pretenses. His silver hair was combed neatly, his posture still strong despite his age. "Grandpa," I breathed, almost in disbelief. "What are you doing here?" He gave me a gentle smile, but there was something in his eyes. A certain weight that I couldn't place. He pulled me into a warm, tight hug. "I know what you've been through, Eliza," he said softly, stepping back and looking at me with concern. "I know everything. And I'm here to help." I stepped back, confused. "Help? How?" Grandpa Richard didn't hesitate. "I've been watching, Eliza. I've seen the way your parents have treated you, the way they've always favored Jason. You've been giving, and it's never been enough for them, has it?" I felt my throat tighten, the familiar ache of years of resentment bubbling to the surface. "No, it's never enough," I said, my voice shaky. "I've given them everything. Financial support, emotional support. I've been there for them in ways I've never asked for anything in return. But when I needed them, when I was in that hospital, they didn't even care." Grandpa's eyes softened, and he reached into his jacket pocket. "I know. And it's wrong. But we need to talk about it. There are some things I need to show you." He handed me an envelope, thick, cream-colored, with a seal that looked old and significant. My heart sank as I looked at it. "What's this?" "It's an invitation," he said, his voice firm. "Next Saturday, I'm having my 80th birthday celebration. The whole family is invited, and I want you there. I know things between you and your parents are tense. But I need to make something clear, something that I've been holding on to for far too long, and I want you to be a part of it." The weight of his words settled on me like a heavy blanket. I didn't know what he was planning, but I knew this wouldn't be just another family party. My parents would be there. Jason would be there. I had no idea what to expect. "Are you sure about this, Grandpa?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "You know they'll fight back, don't you? They'll turn it around, make me look like the villain." Grandpa nodded slowly, his face resolute. "They may try. But the truth has a way of coming out, Eliza. It always does, and I believe you're ready to hear it." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "You're stronger than you think." I looked at the invitation again. This wasn't just some family gathering. This was about setting things right. For me, for my children, for the years I had spent being overlooked, forgotten, and undervalued. As the days leading up to Grandpa's birthday passed, the tension in my house grew. I couldn't stop thinking about what he had said. On the morning of the party, I woke up early, my stomach in knots. Max and Sophie were already awake, playing with their toys, but I couldn't concentrate on anything. I had a folder full of documents, bank statements, receipts, records of every financial transfer I had made to my parents over the years. It was the truth, and I had spent days putting it all together. As I sat at the kitchen table staring at the folder, my phone buzzed. It was a message from my sister Emily. "Hey Eliza. I just heard from Mom. She's really upset about the invitation you received from Grandpa. She's telling everyone you're trying to destroy the family. Just thought you should know." My heart sank. The narrative was already beginning. My parents were spinning the story before I even had a chance to tell my side. But this time, I wasn't gonna let them get away with it. I stuffed the folder into my purse, grabbed my coat, and walked out the door. As I drove to Grandpa's house, I tried to steady my nerves. When I pulled into his driveway, I took a deep breath. The house looked the same as it always had. Grand, full of history and strength. As I walked inside, the first person I saw was Jason. He was standing by the fireplace, laughing with a few cousins. When he saw me, his face fell. "Really, Eliza?" he said, his voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You're still holding on to this? After everything, you're still trying to tear this family apart?" I stood my ground. "I'm not the one tearing the family apart, Jason. I'm just telling the truth." At that moment, Grandpa appeared, his presence filling the room. He was older now, but he still commanded attention. His gaze swept over the room before landing on me. I gave him a small smile, and he nodded in return. Grandpa's presence seemed to dominate the room. As he made his way to the center, he took a deep breath, his sharp blue eyes scanning everyone's faces. I appreciate you all being here today. Grandpa's voice echoed, strong and steady. But there are some things I need to address. Things that have been building up for a long time now. He paused, his gaze settling on me, then slowly swept across my parents and Jason. For years, I've watched this family, watched how certain people have been treated, and I've kept quiet. But I can't do that anymore. I've seen how Eliza has been treated, how she's carried the weight of this family for far too long. Financially, emotionally, she's done everything. And yet, it's never been enough. The room fell silent, and I could feel the tension building. Now, I know some of you will try to spin this, try to make it seem like Eliza is the one causing all the problems. But the truth is, this family has been built on her sacrifices. The money she's sent, the support she's given, it's all been one-sided. And I've seen it. I looked over at my parents. My mom was trying to keep composed, but I could see the discomfort in her eyes. Dad had crossed his arms and looked away. Jason stood there with a smug grin. Grandpa turned to me. Eliza, I want you to stand up and tell everyone what you've been carrying. Tell them what they've done. They need to hear it from you. My stomach tightened, but I knew this was right. I stood up slowly, taking a deep breath. I've been carrying this family for 8 years. I began, my voice steady. Every month, I've sent money to cover the mortgage, the insurance, the car repairs. I've paid for everything. I never once asked for anything in return. And when I needed you, when I was in that hospital bed, fighting for my life, you didn't even show up. You didn't answer my calls. Instead, I got a text message telling me I was a burden. I could feel my emotions rising, but I pushed them down. I've spent my entire adult life taking care of you, making sure you were comfortable. And yet, when it was my turn to need help, you turned your backs on me. That's when I decided I couldn't do it anymore. The words came faster now. I didn't ask for a parade. I just wanted basic respect. I wanted to feel like I mattered. But for years, I've been treated like I'm invisible. And I've kept quiet because I didn't want to cause problems. But I can't keep pretending. Not anymore. As I finished speaking, I looked around the room. My parents looked uncomfortable, their faces flushed with guilt and defensiveness. Jason looked like he was waiting for the right moment to make himself the hero. Grandpa's voice cut through the silence. This isn't about guilt, Eliza. This is about truth. And sometimes the truth hurts. But it's the only thing that will set us free. As I stood there, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The truth was out. For the first time in years, I felt like I was finally being seen. And I wasn't afraid anymore. The room was still, but I felt peace. My parents, who had once seemed so towering in my life, now appeared small and uncomfortable. The guilt was clear in their eyes, even if they refused to acknowledge it. Jason shifted on his feet, clearly hoping to distance himself. But Grandpa was resolute. His gaze moved from my parents to me, unwavering. It's time for the truth to come out. No more hiding behind false pretenses, he said firmly. For years, you've taken advantage of Eliza. You've relied on her financial support, her emotional labor, without ever considering how much she was giving. And now, when she finally has the courage to speak up, you're all shocked. But you shouldn't be. He continued. Eliza has done everything you asked and more. She's worked hard, she's been there for you when no one else would be. And yet you've treated her like she's disposable. But no one deserves to be treated like that. My heart pounded as Grandpa's words resonated through the room. They weren't just words of defense. They were words of accountability. I saw my mom's face twist in discomfort. Dad avoided eye contact with everyone. Jason looked unsettled, no longer smug. Grandpa wasn't done. And I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking this is all Eliza's fault, that she's being dramatic. Well, let me tell you something. This isn't about drama. This is about justice. This is about giving Eliza what she's owed. Respect, appreciation and recognition. And if you can't give her that, then you need to leave her alone. Because she doesn't need any of you anymore. The room was completely silent. My heart raced, but I didn't feel fear. I felt relief that the truth was finally being spoken. Eliza, you're done carrying this family. Grandpa continued, softer now but firm. You've done enough. No one has the right to take advantage of you anymore. And as for the money, I've seen the numbers. I've seen the transfers, the receipts. You've paid out more than any child should ever have to. It was then I realized Grandpa wasn't just standing up for me. He was standing up for justice. For all the silent children who had carried family burdens too long without recognition. My gaze shifted back to my parents. Mom had lowered her head, her hands shaking. Dad's usual composure had cracked. His face was flushed, his jaw tight. Let me make one thing clear, Grandpa said, his voice growing stronger. I don't care how much money anyone in this room has. What matters is that we start treating each other with respect. And if anyone here has a problem with that, you can leave. Several relatives shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke against Grandpa. My parents seemed to shrink under his scrutiny. Mom opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Dad shifted uncomfortably, avoiding eye contact. Grandpa turned to me again. Eliza, you've made the right decision. You don't owe them anything, and I will make sure they understand that. The weight of his words hit me, and I felt relief wash over me. Finally, it was over. The years of sacrifice, of trying to please my parents, trying to prove my worth, it was all over. I didn't need their approval anymore. I had my own worth now. The silence hung heavy, but for the first time in a long while, I felt peace. The weight that had been crushing me was lifting. My parents, who had once seemed like towering figures, now appeared small, weak, and trapped under the truth they had avoided for so long. I glanced at my father again, and for the first time, I saw him for who he truly was. Not the hero I had imagined, but a man who had chosen his own comfort over his daughter's well-being. His face was flushed, his eyes avoiding mine. There was no defiance, just quiet resignation. Mom looked fragile. I had never seen her like this. She was always composed, calculating, the one who kept everything in control. But now she looked broken. Her eyes darting around, avoiding contact. The tears threatening to spill were the only thing that betrayed the facade she had worked so hard to build. I had spent so many years trying to win her approval, trying to be the child she could be proud of. I had sacrificed my own happiness just to make her see me, to make her love me. But now, I realized I had been seeking validation from the wrong person. I had been looking for something she wasn't capable of giving. Jason, too, had changed. He was no longer the golden child. He looked nervous now, his smile faltering as he glanced around, unsure of what to make of this turn of events. For the first time, he seemed out of place. Grandpa was calm as ever. His gaze moved from my parents to the rest of the family. It's not about money. It's not about what anyone owes anyone else. It's about respect. It's about acknowledging the truth. For too long, some of you have been silenced. But not anymore. The truth is out in the open now, and it's time for all of us to face it. There was a collective shift in the room. My parents were cornered. There was no more room for excuses, no more pretending. Grandpa had laid it all out, and their time of being above reproach was over. The next few minutes felt like an eternity. The noise slowly died down, replaced by soft murmurs, shuffling feet, and clinking glasses. It was as though the entire room was holding its breath. But no one spoke. Not yet. Grandpa turned back to me and gave me a small nod of reassurance. You've done the right thing, Eliza. You're not the one who has to apologize here. They are. I looked at my parents one last time. It was over. This painful, exhausting cycle of giving without receiving anything in return had come to an end. It wasn't the dramatic confrontation I had once imagined. It wasn't filled with tears or accusations. Instead, it was quiet, just the cold, undeniable truth of everything that had happened. And in that silence, I realized something. The real power wasn't in the confrontation, the shouting, or the fight. The real power was in walking away, in choosing to let go, in saying, enough. I am no longer your pawn. The power lay in the truth. And now that the truth was out, there was nothing left for me to prove. The choices I had made, the sacrifices, the pain, had all been leading me to this moment. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to prove myself to anyone. I was enough, just as I was. For the first time in years, I felt free. It wasn't the freedom I had expected. It wasn't loud or dramatic or filled with fireworks, but it was real, and it was mine.